5, 6, 2, 4, 6. Okay, we got y'all. We have not moved this chicken coop in months. Now that the bathroom is done and it is still cold outside, it's time to shift focus to working on something different inside. So I think the best place to start is here in our hallway on the upper level, because there's quite a bit to get done. So there was a light switch here that was brown with a tan plate that fed up into the attic, and that was for a whole house fan. Well, what you can't see from where I'm standing, but right above my head, is now an exhaust vent, and that is used for the return air. So this is pretty much a dead switch. So I went ahead and replaced the switch with a half switch, half electric outlet, because there is no power in the hall. And this is going to enable me to be able to use some power up in the attic still. So I'll have to trace down and find where it goes. But it enables me basically to have a switch still to turn maybe lights on and off up there. Maybe eventually retrofit it to a whole house fan, whatever that turns out to be. But it also gives me a place here in the hall that I can plug in electric if I want to vacuum, you know, do something simple up here, even just have lighting that I can share with another room, like I'm doing right now out of the bathroom. So I do want to change this to kind of match this. And then here, this actually, if you can envision it, this was a telephone wall plate. And while, you know, I suppose back in the day that was a good place to have a telephone, was right in the middle of the hall rather than have one in every room. This really just isn't practical right now, so I took the telephone wall plate off, and much to my surprise, instead of finding a small hole in the wall where they ran the wires, I found myself a very large hole in the wall. As a matter of fact, I can almost fit my whole hand in there. So I am going to have to fix that hole. I can't really float the wall, which is to bring the drywall mud out too far, because I'm going to come out up against this wall plate, and I don't really want that to look odd by having those waves in the wall. So I want to keep this as low profile as possible. So the plan, and what I'll try to catch on recording for you guys, is I'm going to actually open this wall up to really about the size of the wall plate. So, you know, there was my wall plate, and I have these metal studs, which actually, when I feel back there, the metal studs are expanded and they take up a lot of space, and they're going to cause me some room when I try to put something behind there. Plus they put another stud in up here that probably extrudes another inch or better behind the drywall. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut an opening that basically is slightly larger than where all of these are, and I'm going to try to make it a perfectly square opening. And then to minimize the amount of drywall mud and floating, and I'm going to do that by trying to use the paper from the drywall as the actual tape in this particular situation. So we're going to give that a try and see then if I can float it a little bit. It will definitely have to get floated in order to look good, but if I can keep this down to a minimum, then we should be all right. So that is the next step of what I've got to do here. And then I do have some ceiling repair work to do from previous ceiling leaks from the roof, and I'll catch a couple of those for you here, and then we'll get to work on getting this done in the hall, because it's going to take several days once I drywall mud it for it to dry and smooth and be ready for paint. So here's a perfect example of why I need to do work in the ceiling. I have a hole. This is another spot. This is directly over top of the stairwell where the stairs meet. Right here at this corner is probably more the seam in the drywall sagging. I can't get the lighting to shadow just right, but there's also one right here as well. I was not originally a fan of doing smooth ceilings, but if I can't get these patches floated out right, then I will probably fall back and stamp the ceiling. Noelle and I did do some paint sampling, and we picked a paint color for this hallway that we thought would tie in good with the wallpaper. I'm going to put this camera down and get started measuring for this opening behind me on the wall where the telephone wall plate was.
It's filming.
right, so this is the basis of where I'm starting, and what you'll notice is I've got kind of a double template marked out on the wall. And my intent is I will go cut a piece of drywall which will actually fit inside this, and I used the existing telephone wall plate as a starter, and then I extended another 1/2 inch so I can cut a piece and know exactly what size that is. And then this is a template ring that is another 3/4 of an inch wide around the outside. Now if this goes the way I intend it, I will take and remove entirely this piece of drywall, opening up a square or rectangle inside that space. And then what I'm going to do here is only remove the paper, so the existing paint and paper, inside this line over to the hole. Now, the next step will be to cut my rectangle, that exact same size, and then mark it out 3/4 of an inch all the way around. And what I will do with it is I will remove all of the drywall but leave the paper that would fit inside this ring. Then what I'll be able to do is I'll put something behind here to back it, because I've got to be able to screw to the wall, right, to make it all sturdy. But then I will mud inside this ring on the wall, put my piece of board on it, and then smooth that out. And instead of putting tape, which is going to build an additional layer, that's going to make it to where I've got a lower profile right here, or at least that's the plan. When using your wife's wicker laundry basket as a workbench, I highly advise you be very careful. So because my hole is probably not perfectly square, I went ahead and just measured kind of around the edge. Now, if I need to fine tune that anymore, I'll just go ahead and slip in the piece of paper and trim the piece of paper up with scissors around the outside edge to make sure she's good and fits right inside this line. The next step is I'm going to take this part down just enough for the paper to fit because the rectangular block fit. Gone ahead and opened up the hole. I have now trimmed this out and taken some of the paper out, which has given me a little lip, a little channel right here. Now again, I'm paper thin on this drywall, so I had to trim this just a little bit to make sure. Now my paper fits right up inside that channel really well. I'll be filling this with drywall mud, putting that back on, and then smoothing out my drywall mud, which should give me pretty smooth seam after a couple of coats and feathering it out a little bit. But before I can do that, this obviously is not going to be a permanent solution in its own. I still need to give this something to screw onto in the back. So I am going to go cut myself some board that I can put in here, and I will probably use something like subfloor particle board, so that I can put drywall screws in it and it will hold. And I'm gonna have to remember that when I measure that, I need to be able to put drywall screws on the outside of where this is at. So it needs to be out on this side and this side, as well as above and below. And that way, the particle board is actually fastened to my drywall. And then I'll do a few screws in toward the center, but not enough to actually split this. So I'll probably do a couple right here toward the center. And that will hold this fastened to the subfloor that I'm using, or the particle board I'm using for this. So I'm gonna go get that cut and get that installed, and I'll pick this back up in a few minutes. So I had a buddy of mine tell me a while back, he said, if you really want to know if your wall is smooth, use the flashlight method to find out. And I never really thought too much about it, and I was kind of playing around with it today, and I thought, you know, let's take a look and see. So if I take a look at this wall right here, and I shine a flashlight straight on it, everything looks to be good. Looks to be good and flat, no real issues. But oddly enough, I can actually feel some bumps in this wall that I can't see. Until, of course, I take and I put the flashlight from the side, and now these spots are showing up really good as imperfections in the wall. So I don't know what was there. It looked like maybe some nails started to back out or screws started to back out of the drywall, but either way, there are issues there. And so I'm going to use that same thought when it comes to what I'm doing here with the patch. So if I look at my patch straight on, not dry yet, I can feel the imperfections in it, but I've got a really good seam right around this lip where I overlapped. That feels really good. Of course, I still have some with the screw holes, and I got a little divot just from where it wasn't as level as I'd hoped. But when I come this way on it, now you can start to see all of the areas up in here because of the shadow that I'm gonna have to go through and I'll hit with a finish coat tomorrow. Since I recorded the last segment, I have done a second coat on this, and then I didn't really have a lot of sanding to do because I smoothed it out good, but I did a little bit. You can tell when something's been patched over, even if it was done really well, because there's a texture difference between the years of wall paint, which have left kind of an orange peel look on the wall, and the freshly, professional sand looking, drywall patch. In some case not, but, in the most part, you can tell because it's a lot smoother. So I started thinking on this, and I'm like, well, there's got to be something I can do to make it not stand out so much. So I thought to myself, what if I just diluted down the drywall mud and applied it with a roller so that it gave me a similar stipple effect to painting it over all those years, and then kind of knock it down a little bit. And that's what I did. If you look at this wall, in here is where the actual patch is, and there's no evidence of the patch, but it's also not going to have a smooth sheen to it either, because I got a little bit of a texture mixed in here and then very lightly, I applied it almost paint thickness of the drywall mud, just wet it down, rolled it on, let it dry. I just ran a sanding sponge over it very light to knock down the rough edges of that stipple. And I think once I paint it, this is all gonna blend really well. So if I put it this way and shine it on the wall, again, nothing really shows up. If I come down here, there's my shadows from those spots I showed you a while ago. Come down here, really, I'm happy. I can see a little bit where it's sanded down a little more than other spots, but otherwise I think it's pretty good. Coming down the stairwell, I actually noticed here we had some stress cracking going on. So for this, I went ahead and I put a piece of tape around the corner and drywall mudded over that, and then I have sanded that down and I have textured it as well. As you can see up in here, I've got, it's a little smooth on this corner, and I think that'll be okay. But you can tell I left myself just a little bit of texturing in this all the way around. I don't want it perfectly smooth, but I don't want it really rough either. Down here, again, same thing. This has had some drywall sagging. I had a definite line here where you could see the difference in the drywall seam. So I've gone ahead and taped this and then mudded over it with 2 coats. I did the same thing with the texture effect here, and where the corner bead actually mounts up in here, you could see the edge. I think they went very thin on their drywall mud, and so those cracks actually showed up. Now that I didn't tape, I just remudded it and put a texture over that, and I'm going to show you those textures. These I think turned out a little bit better. So you can see the texture. Here is a quick look at the color scheme that we are doing up here in the hall. As you can see, I didn't do back in there yet. I have to get back in there. But when you have kids running in and out, you do what you can. And sometimes you have a little fun because you know you're going to paint over it. Hello, chickies. I'll keep you in for a few. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4, 6. Okay, we got y'all. We have not moved this chicken coop in months. Oh, it definitely rutted in. There he goes. So I'm going to take this chicken coop down and scrape it out. But before I do that, I got to bring in a Walmart order. We had a DoorDash delivery from Walmart while I was getting the coop ready. But we are I'm planning on just taking it all the way down to the end of the drive, scraping it out really good, putting some new bedding in it and bring it back for these chickens. It's gonna rain tomorrow, so that'll give them some good, clean, dry bedding. So it's been several months since I've done anything with the bedding other than just turn it. So it's ready for compost. Ash gets a 1-day supply of Crave. Alright, I'm going to take these down. Have a feeling I'll probably need both. And yeah, let's get this thing scraped out and ready for the chickens. Alright, I don't know if I can get this all the way back here to the compost pile or not, because it is super wet from the snow and then some rain. But I'm gonna give it a whirl. Worst that can happen is I get stuck, right? Alright, so I didn't get stuck. But it was definitely hard to roll it through. Tires sunk probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch in a couple spots. But it's back there. Now I'm gonna get it scraped out. And fortunately taking it back will be lighter than getting it out there, because it won't be as full. Their nesting boxes are pretty empty from where they've been knocking it out. Not a lot there to deal with. Alright, I gotta get this thing flipped around. I'm gonna guess I'm probably gonna feel that tomorrow, and I am winded. It's the hazards of sitting around on a couch during the winter time because you have snow, or you just don't feel motivated. Best thing you can do is keep active, and I didn't do that, but I'll make up for it. So if you didn't see it on a previous episode video, oh, I'm getting this tight. I actually baled some of my own hay out of the back fields before the weather turned kind of wet and nasty. I got about 5 or 6 bales probably. I got a good, I think, what do I have? I think I still have 5 bales in there right now that I can use, and that's what I'm using as the bedding for this chicken coop. So I gotta get it propped open, and I'll put some new bedding down in there and in the boxes. I don't know if it'll take a bale, it might take a little bit more. I don't think that I need to put it as deep as what I was putting it in the winter time. I can rotate it a little bit easier, a little bit more often now, but I wanted to make sure I could go several months without having to change the bedding, just turn it, and I accomplished that. So now it's time to get the clean stuff down. Should probably build myself a little rod prop right there. Get all these tools put up here in a minute. The kids were letting the cats in the barn in single-digit weather, so I miraculously lost a little bit of twine on this one, but it's okay. There's my other one. As you can see, it's actually quite roomy in here. So we picked up 8 more chicks today, and this coop is actually large enough to handle, I think it's 20 square feet, so probably 20 birds. So, but I think with the 5 layers and the rooster we have now, and the additional 8, keeping it just a hair over half dozen, 14 birds, that's probably all we're gonna do. If we do grow beyond that, because for some reason we feel we need more chickens, then I'll probably put up a permanent coop and still use this to transport some back and forth, but otherwise I'll separate them and give them kind of a sheltered, more permanent environment that they can be in. But for now, I guess it's going to work well for all those birds. And 3 laying boxes I think we're still good, but we're kind of maxing out. So we intended for 6 birds the first time, and we didn't get that. We got 5 and the rooster. Laying birds, I should say. So if we get all 8 as laying birds, obviously that's going to give me baker's dozen, 13 birds. So 4 share a box, that's 12. That might get a little tight, so I may have to think about another laying box or what we're going to do. But we'll kind of cross that bridge. It's not impossible for me to retrofit and add nesting boxes to the side. My only thing would be just how heavy it would be. So I need to think about that as these birds get a little older. But we have, according to the first batch, we have about 5 months yet, so that'll put us into July, deep into July, before the first of those birds will ever be ready to start laying. So, all right, let me get some grass to put in these nesting boxes, and we'll put them in the back and get my tools picked up, and we'll get this thing rolled back and put the chickens away. All right, now that they're all enjoying their clean coop, I walk down and get a rake, I think, and rake down their run before it rains tonight and gets even worse. Alright, so the chickens have this new waterer, and they don't really know how to use it very well. So I had to help them learn a little bit here. I think they're starting to get the hang of it. All right, here you go. There you go. You want this? Here, what? You getting it? Yeah, you're getting it. All right, well, I think that's enough of the chickens for now. I have to get the gator back down to the barn so I can get the barn closed up, get the kids out here, make sure they get all their scooters picked up, and then I think I'll probably just go ahead and wrap this video up. Thanks everybody for spending some time with me. I've got more on the home improvement side of things, the DIY, coming up in the next episode, because that is a never-ending project. And it's been beautiful weather today, so I'm sure we'll have much more going on around the homestead over the next week or so. I'll catch you all on the next one. Thanks for watching.